All right. So I guess we'd love to have Hey, Celia, can you hear us? Okay, but I don't think we can hear.
It looks frozen.
Yeah.
Celia, I sent you an email with a link to Speaker Problem, like a forum for Google+, so there might be something useful in there to sift through if you want, or we can also do the typing thing, for sure.
So take a look at that. And just, are you okay if this is recorded to send to other coordinators, Celia?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if you want to play around with that, and then in the meantime, we just thought we'd kind of start off. So by giving you guys just a bit of a grounded discussion. So we sent around a document beforehand called Campus Community Gardens, and the link was in the email. It looks like everyone is on it, so that's awesome. And basically what we wanted to do out of this call was just sort of start the conversation about what is going on with Campus Gardens across our networks, and how can we most effectively work together, and what sort of resources would you guys need. And we wanted to start by grounding the conversation in an understanding that every campus community garden is really different. Some are more communal gardens, some are more collective gardens, some are a little bit more institutionalized, other are ad hoc, varying sizes, as well as you guys are all in very different growing locations. So we probably won't be focusing as much on growing practices, seed types, and that sort of thing, more of the processes. And then if you guys want to get into sharing out like the actual ecological growing practices, that's awesome, because there are some useful techniques and natural herbicides, like chili peppers and lemon and olive oil that work across the country. So there's definitely things that we can talk through together. But we thought we'd spend most of the time talking through sort of some of the best practices, some of the way to proposition campus gardens that might help build support for it, and then some of the ways it can connect into the broader student food movement, by connecting to applied student research, to events, and to food service provision. Yeah, how does that sound to everyone? SJ, are you around?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're just a little frozen.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Great. Okay. So what we thought we could do is just start off with a little bit of a go-around explanation of where your campus garden is at. So a little bit of history, structure, who the partners are, what's the size and goals, and sort of like what are some of the major sticking points or challenges, and just start there so we can kind of all understand where each other are at. And we can fill in a little bit for some of the campuses that aren't here, just to be able to make those linkages for those who aren't here. So Celia, if you want to start typing if you're unable to talk, and share a little bit that way, and maybe we'll start with Les first. We'll go east to west.
All right. Well, I'm not 100% sure on the history of our garden, as this is the first year I've been involved. I know the partnerships are through the Grad Student Union. It's right behind the grad bar, as well as some of the larger infrastructure. We've got, I believe it's 5 beds. They're about 5 feet by 15 feet. One of the nice things right now is we are going through a major renovations with it and expansion. Aramark came in last year to our campus as a new food service provider, and they gave a $5,000 grant to do something around the campus, and that money was allocated to expanding the community garden. Since then, the $5,000 grant has been matched by another group. I'm not 100% sure what the group is. I just found out about it from Emma the other day, as well as MUN's Facility Management is giving us $5,000 worth of labor to help expand the garden. So we're looking to double the size of the garden, I think, is their current plans. That being said, we're going to see if we can go a little farther with that. $15,000, well, $10,000 plus $5,000 in labor is quite a bit, and I think that we'll be able to do a lot more than just double the size. Do a couple more community outreach programs and such. So that's where we're at right now. We're trying to couple it with a couple ASR projects. The other day I was sitting in class and I looked out and we actually had a greenhouse on at MUN that myself and Ethan didn't even know about. It's currently being used by the biology department to keep some of their plants alive for their plant science programs. We only teach about 3 courses. We kind of like looked around the size to see what was going on with it, and there's not much in there. So we're going to try to get a hold of the different profs involved. That I went to the biology department today to get their names of everyone who actually uses this greenhouse and see if we can't couple some of the initiatives that they're doing with their lab work to bring stuff into the garden. Because a lot of their plant science courses are taught in the winter. So they grow, part of their labs is to start, I believe it's bell peppers and a few other things in February. And where we have such a small growing season here in Newfoundland, it's really beneficial to have these plants, 3/4 of the way grown so we can get them in the ground in May, June. But what's happening right now is the students at the end of the term in April are throwing them out because they're moving away from St. John's. So we've got these great plants that we could use going to waste. So we're going to try to work out something with the department that we can actually keep those plants alive in the greenhouse for the extra month until we can put them in the ground. And work with those programs to help better the garden, lower the costs of bringing in transplants and having stuff that's organically grown within MUN itself and by students for students. I think that'll be really beneficial, especially when we go for the expansion, to see if we can partner up with the biology department for some of the garden beds that are going in. But that's pretty much where we're at now. I know that they used the garden for the last 2 years with events at the Harvest. They partnered up with the Grad Student Union for a fall feast and a harvest feast the last 2 years, and they were very, very successful. So we're hoping to do the same thing this year at a bit larger of a scale. So yeah, that's about it. What's going on at MUN?
Okay, thanks so much. And I'm already hearing some possible connections from other campuses. So that's really exciting. And yeah, sometimes finding what to do with that much money when it's when certain companies are used to spending that much money on something very small and realizing the potential of it is a challenge in itself. But something that's really exciting to hear about. Okay, SJ.
Okay, so our garden program, our garden project is sort of at the very beginning stages in a lot of ways. Although we have money, we don't presently have a place. We had a space in mind. Our campus is on a hill, and so we had a space in mind at the top of the hill. And that sort of fell through in that the Don we were working with, who was the Don for the building, has left. And the other Don is interested, but there isn't the same buy-in from her. So then we moved, sort of within a week, we decided, okay, we're going to bring it downtown. There's a small satellite campus, and a lot of really engaged students there who are really interested in food. It's where there already is a community garden there that I belong to that's run outside of the university, just the community members who take care of it. And there's already a compost site there. And anyway, so we have decided to try and work down at this particular site where there are all these leadership students working. and going to school and living as well, because there's a residence there. And so I wrote this proposal, sort of pre-proposal almost, and sent it to the dean, and we met with her today. And yeah, I sort of said earlier, we had a bit of a frustrating first meeting. She was a real no person, so right off the bat, everything is no, and then sort of warmed up to ideas, but she wasn't necessarily clear on what ideas she liked and what she didn't. So it was hard to know where we were moving from there, but I think we will have somewhere to move. We were hoping for 3 raised beds, and she's a new dean to this college who, so it's all this politicking, but she's basically been sent to the college to oversee its destruction because they want to get rid of it. So she's willing to let us work in some ways, but also very hesitant and doesn't really trust the students. So she's not going to let us put anything as big as sort of 3. I was thinking, like, they weren't even that big. I was thinking raised beds about 3 by 6 feet, or they would sort of fit in a very particular area. Instead, it looks like she's given us the go-ahead for 1 raised bed that'll be like 5 by 5. And in that, we also have to rebuild and maintain a new compost system, which is falling apart. So in terms of goals, our goal right now is just sort of, I guess, prove that as students we can take care of the space and are willing to grow the food and participate in the composting and the growing. And then, so yeah, our goal is really now to prove ourselves. And the challenge will be that it will be getting the opportunity to show that we can do this and do this responsibly. We do have partnerships with a lot of community organizations, including the gardening group that I belong to, who also has employees of the New Brunswick Community Harvest Gardens who work with us, and the food bank, as well as a faculty member from the university, and sort of other students and community members. So we're trying to find a way to navigate how that community group can maintain its own garden and help facilitate it and create something for students in the same space. So yeah, that's sort of, I guess that's sort of where we're at right now. It seems a little, I'm not really sure how this is all going to work out. The other thing I should add is that the dean does not want us to contact facilities about this, which she says it'll create more red tape, which I understand, but it also means we can't work with people who have labor and tools and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, right now we're trying to sort through what they're actually willing to do and help us with, and what they're not, without, and somehow do this without facilities or res life, because there's a residence down there too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as I said, this hasn't really marinated in my brain yet.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and I think that's really, really important to hear, like, a lot of the barriers, because gardens are so interesting because they are these physical spaces that not only, you know, take up space, but they're both spatially present and also temporally present, and a lot of us watching them. So I think something that would be really interesting to get out of the group is, we hope this to be a continued conversation, but how do you tackle some of those issues? Like, in the winter, it looks ugly, what do you do? Or because I think these are some really interesting things that the administrators and different facilities managers, you know, have to deal with themselves and often want to take it up. And we've heard, I mean, as you know, we take a very collective approach and collaborative approach with lots of different stakeholders. We've heard from the University of Victoria, they started up like an ad hoc garden group, and a couple days before one of their big harvest parties, it was torn up by the administration. And so I think you have to be careful, and change is slow, and it takes a lot of people to warm up to it. So really, really appreciate those barriers, and I hope through this conversation, but others, that we'll be able to think of what are some of the small wins and what are some of the steps. So, if anyone does have ideas that come up throughout this and want to jump in, please do. And if not, we'll just sort of keep the conversation going. And you've sparked a lot of questions in our minds of how to navigate that, and what are examples of cities that have done this, and so okay, great to get that context, and we'll dive into some resources that might be able to help. Celia, let's see, is it working, your mic?
I don't think so.
Oh, it is!
Oh!
Yay!
Oh! Good one, okay.
And maybe you can actually just introduce yourself, because I don't know if you've met Les before, and you haven't.
I haven't.
But.
So, hello, I'm Celia. I'm from Vancouver Island University, which is right in the middle of Vancouver Island, and my position here is actually a work position, so I'm a staff member. I graduated a year ago as a student, as part of a coordinator of the CFSG, and now it's been funded to become a full-time staff position, which is really cool. So we have a garden here on campus, and it's been around for 5 or 6 years, I think, and is quite small. A lot of people don't even know that it exists. It doesn't have, it struggles with resources, because every year we apply for work op positions for students to be paid to maintain the garden, and then we very rarely get the position funded because there's lots of competition for those funds. So then often the garden is just forgotten and not maintained over the summer, and things die, and then it looks really unkempt, and is sort of like a physical demonstration of what we don't want people to assume about the movement on campus. But in the past few years, it's picked up a lot of momentum and more resources, and facilities actually was just given a project to landscape all around the garden, and it looks really beautiful now, and they also installed automatic sprinklers, so that's going to be a huge benefit to the garden, because all summer long it'll be watered. And we also planted an orchard last year, I think, and now that's being watered by the sprinklers as well, which is really great. And so the garden is run by a campus garden club, and then there's also boxes that the culinary arts program maintains, and they use the food and herbs grown in that garden to cook with and then sell to students in the cafeteria. And there's been a new idea on the table to try and connect the garden with the Faculty of International Education, because that's where all the money is on campus, is with international students coming in. So the idea was to rename the garden as the International Campus Garden instead of just the Campus Garden, and maybe hire international students to plant foods that grow well in this climate, but foods that are from around the world, and then have information sessions or workshops to teach about global food systems and what we can grow and eat here, and cultural diversity and things.
They do that at an organization here called The Stop, and it's they have Ethiopian garden and Filipino garden, and each plot is a different ethnicity, which is
cool.
A sense of real pride for community members, and it's so valuable for integration and language.
Yeah.
For lessons, or David spoke to what they were hoping to get out of the call and potentially the network ongoing. So curious how these types of calls can be useful for you and what you're looking for, if anything?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear you there, actually.
Oh,
You're breaking
sorry.
up a little bit.
Sorry, I was just saying that before Celia hopped on, we chatted with you, Les, and Sarah Jane about what we're hoping to get out of the call and the network. And it would be great to hear from Celia about how this can be useful for you and how we can support what's going on at BIU through the network.
Mhm. Well, I'm mostly interested to learn how people leverage funds, and then I've also, through my work, realized the significance and importance of these national connections, because working with administration here, they often cite the national connections that I use as like one of the most important aspects of my work in terms of at least looking really good as an institution and collaborating with other institutions. So I think if we can also, if I can leverage that as part of a garden initiative, then maybe people will be more interested in providing resources for the garden if they know that we're partnering with other schools and learning from other schools.
Well, that's great feedback to hear. And just so you're up to speed, Les was hoping to get out of this, or maybe, sorry, can we just really quickly Les and Sarah Jane so that you guys are all familiar with what you're looking for out of the call?
Well, personally, I'm looking to find out what people have done with financing. We've been given a decent amount of money to do something with the garden, and I want to see, what have the costs incurred at other universities been, and how are you able to best use your money to better the garden? Because right now we do have about $15,000 worth of funding to do something, but what they want to do, I think, will cost much less than $15,000, and I want to make the most use of this money. Economically, space-wise, just try to get the juice absolutely everything we can out of it, rather than overpaying for labor or overpaying for supplies. Try to find efficient and effective ways to use that money so people can really get the best out of the garden, and really see the money go back to the students rather than paying several work crews to do something when we could engage students in starting up the garden beds for a skill they could take home with them within their own yards.
What about like something that I'm trying to organize here is cooking classes offered to students using food that's sold at the farmers market, so foods that students don't necessarily know how to cook, like beets or squash.
Yeah.
And maybe you could like collaborate cooking classes with the food that's grown in the garden, so a workshop could be held where students come and see what food is growing, and then they go to a cooking class and learn how to cook those foods. And so you could use your funds to purchase those groceries so students don't have to pay for the cooking classes, and then students can all go home with a meal, because like it's pretty awesome that you have that funding, that you have more funding than you need.
Yeah.
That's a rare opportunity, I think.
True. That's I think it's a really great idea. It's one of those things we haven't gotten our details of how it's all being allocated and how much wiggle room we've got. But workshops and actually engaging students is one of the things we really, really want to get out of this. Because right now it's not as many people know about the garden as people should. And really trying to get people out there to engage by offering. I mean, one of the number one ways to get people active at MUN is at least offer free food. It's one of the easiest ways to get anybody to do anything on this campus. We have a really problem with student engagement with a lot of different movements around, but as soon as someone says they're student involved, they're there. So our farmers market's actually starting up this weekend in St. John's, the first one of the year. So it'll be definitely something to explore. I think that'd be a really great idea, because we do have a kitchen right beside our community garden for bidders for our grad student bar. So I think that'd be a really great partnership to work with.
Cool.
Yeah, so something to think through that we can chat through too is Dalhousie. I know Ali and Jada aren't on the call today, but they just leveraged $17,000 a year for their garden, so it's a fairly similar budget, which might be interesting to talk through.
That'd be great.
What technologies you guys are dealing with.
And it could be interesting to try and collect different operating budgets and proposals that students from across the country have submitted for their gardens, just to see the scope of what everyone's thinking. So that, those can maybe be reused or resubmitted and stuff.
As well as like understanding like what the next level up is, because I know Ryerson probably gets $30,000 worth of funding for their gardens, but they don't feel like it's nearly enough because they're at this production capacity. And so it's an interesting space to think through. Are we dealing with $2,000 or 20 or
Yeah.
okay, great. And Esther, would you just remind repeating a goal for the call, or if it's shifted?
Oh, yeah, I think when I first was talking, I was still thinking through all of that. I'm having been frustrated today, I'm looking to sort of see how other people are working, get some inspiration, particularly in how people are working across different faculties and departments, because we've now in this meeting been told don't deal with these people. I'm interested to see how those relationships between facilities management and a department or a college or a faculty sort of work. And I'd be interested to see sort of how you manage to get these people on board together, particularly with all the sort of red tape. And maybe the context is different, such that there isn't the animosity between them, or there isn't the sort of hesitancy to work together. But yeah, I'm looking to see how people work on these multiple levels of administration.
Another objective for me being here is to see if what other organizations have like internationalized their garden. So it might be really helpful for me to connect with the STOP or learn from their example.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we're just thinking, Caitlin and I thought through a few resources that we've collected or know through the years and thought we could just kind of take some time just to explain those and what's out there. So after this call, it might be a place to kind of go in and see what's possible. And I see that Lexi's just hopped, and I think she'll be a place for inspiration. Hey, Lexi.
Sorry, I thought we were starting at 4, but I didn't get your email until just now.
Oh, so sorry about that.
Yeah, I messaged you, and I was like ready to go, and I didn't have anything, and I didn't know how to like do anything. So.
Oh, I'm
I'm just going to a place to sit down right now, so I'll just be a second.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, I think we emailed your Waterloo account.
Well, it should have gone straight through, and I did get an email, but I literally just got it like a minute ago.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Well, there's lots of there's notes on what we've done so far, but basically we've come in and introduced sort of coordinator objectives for what you want to get out of a campus garden network, and also sort of the context of where your garden's at, the history, your goals, its size, and just sort of sharing where your campus is coming from with the garden. So Lexi, maybe if you want to hop in there, and then you can maybe sift back through some of the notes just to get some further context as we're going.
I have to head out in about 10 minutes.
Okay. So I think Lexi said she was just going to hop out for a second. Lexi, would you mind hollering when you're back? Okay, well, while Lexi's doing that, something we thought we could do is just share a few resources that might be useful. So in the note document, if everyone can take a look at that, Caitlin's just highlighted a section of some of the resources that we have. And one of those resources says Profiles of Campus Gardens. And this was a list that was put together by Cam Bell, who's a past coordinator from UNBC, that basically he did a research project to analyze about 30 gardens and what kind of production they have, as well as where's the end product going. So he's put together like a 30-page report, but there's just this, what the link is to there is a really simple Excel spreadsheet of like examples of what's out there. So if you're feeling like you need a place of inspiration, it's a variety of sizes and types of gardens, and so that's a kind of a cool place to check out. Cam is usually offline. He's in a pretty rural community right now, but has a lot of great ideas there, and we're happy to make connections between those gardens that we have. And then the other key documents there are reports that have been written for us. So we have a report on garden initiatives, as well as a report on a variety of garden initiatives called the PGI report, as well as a webinar that was done in 2013 by Dalhousie and Ryerson. So there's a reporting there about different strategies and challenges of setting up gardens mainly, and then some challenges on and ideas on maintenance. And another thing is a grant that I wrote earlier this year that was accepted, and it was about the importance of community gardens. So if you're feeling like you'd like to leverage more funding, there's a resource there, or some of the language there might be useful just in conversations to leverage just trust and excitement around things. So those are some basic ideas, and then there's actually a practical, very practical garden planner for those of you who are new to gardening and actually want some more ecological background. That's there as well.
Sarah,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Where will this document be posted after this check-in?
Great question. So we'll email it out to everyone to confirm. We also have it in something under, I think they're all shared on it. It's under National Files of the Campus Food Systems Project, and it's under Resources.
Okay.
And there's a section called we call it Campus Farms, but we'll probably switch the folder to become Campus Gardens/Farms.
Okay. And then I see the soil survey.
Yes. So that is another opportunity, and Lexi, we'll have you hop in just after this, but before Celia hops off. There's a really cool project going on across Canada called Shared Opportunities on Institutional Land. And what this is looking at institutions like hospitals, schools, military bases that are all dealing with, are trying to think of growing food on their land. And so this is a survey to ask probably administrators or facilities managers about the interest of growing. And we thought it might be an interesting thing to introduce to campuses because A, the people running the study would really like campuses involved, but B, it's a legitimate outside study that might lend some legitimacy to your campus to be able to think through the value of growing and see that it's connected to a really huge movement in Canada right now. So I'd love your feedback to think through on how the distribution of this study could go. I've been asked to distribute on behalf of campuses, but I'm wondering if it would be more useful for it to go through each of you to send to your administrators, or if it would be more useful for this to be. So if there's any comments on that, would be really welcome. And if not, just think over it, and we can go from there.
So could it be, I mean, I'm trying to think of who would respond to the survey at VIU, because like one person's opinion, it doesn't necessarily speak to the institution itself. So is the objective to send it to a diversity of admin at institutions, or to find like the person that truly would represent the goals of the institution?
Great question. So I think it is meant to be representative of an institution, but it's not like a sign up to become. It's going to be anonymous, and it's
okay.
to understand the scope of what interest is there. So probably one person representing, but it wouldn't be like, so VIU will achieve these goals. It's more aspirational.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna head off.
Okay, awesome. So we'll send along some ideas of ethnic gardening to you.
Cool, great.
And send it to the group.
Awesome.
Okay.
And then could you also send the link to where on the Google Docs you've put this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you guys.
Bye, Celia.
Bye.
Okay, so Lexi, we just went through a bit of an overview of some of the campus gardens, and then Caitlin and I just chatted through some of the resources that we've collected. But we'd like to chat, hear from you about what's going on in campus and a little bit about the history, the goal, the process that you've gone through with your campus garden, because you've been working for 6 months.
Absolutely. Sorry, and just to clarify, in terms of, because I came in, I was a bit confused. So all these resources, you're going to email us to where to find them, right?
Yeah, so there's actually Google Docs going, and yeah, it'll all be there.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I'm Lexi. I'm from the University of Waterloo, and I live at St. Paul's, which is a university college, so it's a residence, and it holds classrooms, and it's environmentally progressive. I'm also part of Greenhouse, which is a social innovation hub, so through my role with the Ontario Campus Food Systems Project and Greenhouse, I've been working on building more local and sustainable food systems on campus, and really focusing the past half of my work on expanding food production opportunities. So since, oh goodness, January, I've been planning, or maybe even December, trying to get a community garden up and running at St. Paul's. And we just had our launch on Thursday, which is really exciting. So it's official now. And basically how it's working, or going to work, as produce has not been harvested yet, so we're still planting, but basically we have a partnership with Chartwells, which is our food service provider, and they have agreed to purchase everything that we grow at market value, and we're hoping even better. That's still, the negotiations are still to come, but at least at market value, and then that money will be reinvested back into the garden. So we're going to have our own bank account, if you will, under St. Paul's Finances. And then a portion of the revenue will also be donated to Endeavors, which is a local charitable organization, if you will, to raise money for students' overseas placements for international development. And then the food itself will be used in our cafeteria, so very local. And a portion of the food will also be donated to our Aboriginal services here for their weekly soup and bannock days. And the goal is that this is going to become a part of the inherent culture of St. Paul's, and that the volunteer base will mostly come from St. Paul's, but also bring in other members of the University of Waterloo community and the broader community. We've hired 2 garden coordinators through the work-study program. They're going to be managing it, and they're paid, which is awesome. And so they're going to be running everything and making sure that we have enough volunteers. All the logistics are sorted out. All the tracking is done. And then I'm going to be supporting them in these roles. And we currently have a 10 by 24 foot plot. It was supposed to be 10 by 14. We actually got it expanded on like the first day, so that was exciting. So that's a very brief overview. I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into. It's a really long process of planning and building relationships. Very challenging, but worthwhile. So it's a lot of legwork to get allocated a little patch of grass to dig up, but definitely worth it. And I also did a bunch of grant applications to secure funding, which we did, fortunately.
Wonderful. So you bring up a lot of exciting points there, Lexi, and I think you've got a lot of resources to share out. I'm wondering if there are any questions from Les or SJ about the process or finance models, or, yeah, might be some crossover.
I can't see anybody at this point, so I'm not sure whether someone else was just about to talk. But I have a question for Lexi, or just everyone in general.
Go for it.
So, Lexi, you're saying your plot is like 10 by 24. It's not huge. And so I'm also dealing with sort of, it's going to be much smaller than that to start, but still small. And one of the things, even when we were proposing something larger, one of the resistance or points of contention was, we were saying the food could be used by students. They have a weekly soup dinner and communal house dinners, and the dean was saying, like, well, the harvest, that would be like, one soup and then that's it and it's over. So you can't promise all of these things. And that sort of attitude was like, somehow it was not worth it to grow a small amount of food, yet they're also saying you have to start small. So I'm wondering how you guys were thinking of using your small plot sort of most effectively in order to feed and sell to your food service provider, and how you're dealing with size and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can certainly sympathize with those tensions and conflicting areas. Basically, we're really lucky. The relationship that we have with Chartwell is they've agreed to purchase whatever we grow. So, like we said, that if they have, if they want specific things, to let us know, and we can try to, if they want tomatoes, we can grow tomatoes. But they pretty much were like, do whatever you want, and we will buy it, and we'll just incorporate it into our menus, which is wonderful. So no matter how much we grow, they're going to buy it, pretty much, and they're going to just incorporate, and then we're just going to give them a heads up. So our head chef there was kind of like, okay, so if you could just give me like a week's notice if something's coming up that, going to have like 6 tomatoes ready, then I can, plan the menu. So obviously if there is, say, like a couple of carrots ready for 1 week, we're either going to store those till we get more carrots to make, a carrot soup, or he's going to supplement those carrots with the carrots that he's already buying. So that kind of logistical organization is working in partnership really closely with our food service provider to ensure that they have everything they need. I think it's a little bit different in your case with this like community-run food services, which sounds really, really awesome, by the way. But I think that it just comes down to like strong relationships, strong collaboration, which takes a ton of time. And when people, like administration especially, are making comments like, oh, well, like, one, it's too small, but you have to start small, and like it doesn't really make sense, kind of maybe like politely pointing out those tensions and explaining that, okay, we have to start somewhere. This is a really worthwhile process, and it's worth it, and the goal is that we're going to prove ourselves in the first year, we're going to track things effectively, we're going to mark everything down, and in future years we're hoping to expand. So that's the goal with our garden, is that through the revenue we generate, we'll be able to get more resources to make it bigger and bigger.
Awesome, thank you.
And I think there's a couple other campuses that aren't here. So the University of Ottawa is also starting up a brand new student garden. It was traditionally communal, or the community garden. Each person had a plot, and the community garden has donated 6 plots to kind of break down the barriers between them and create a communal plot. So I think that's going to be an interesting piece as well, to learn about like really starting from the ground up and what that looks like and how do you engage volunteers. The University of Northern British Columbia is doing a greenhouse and producing the food and selling it to their campus hub. So as well, Lexi and others might have ideas to help them with the tracking process, but also it might be a different model because it won't be sort of like a corporate model coming to them. It might be interesting to figure out if there's some advice that you guys can share between you on selling to different buyers.
Just a question about that. Did you guys have the relationship and the agreement with Chartwells before you started growing, or was it something where we've already have an established garden, like a plan going on, and then they agreed to it? Like, at what point was Chartwells gung-ho to actually get involved and buy this product? And did you guys pitch that to them in what way?
Yeah, great question. So we involved them from the beginning. That being said, they weren't on board from the beginning. So basically how it worked is through a bunch of networking for like over 4 months, I was really trying to figure out what was the best area of focus, because there's so many different things you can do with food. And I ran a local food day, and I ran a field trip, and I was doing a big ASR project and trying to have the biggest impact in the short amount of time, relatively speaking, that I have here. So centered on food production, so we decided, okay, we want to start a community garden at St. Paul's, and then try to map out how this was going to look. And once we decided that, well, like I decided with some of the other mentors that I have, that this is something that I wanted to do, then I spoke to our head chef and was kind of like, hey, we're interested in doing this. We'd really love to serve the food in the calf. And initially it was just, can we give you food to serve in the calf, right? Like that, let's just have like a community building exercise and have a really strong volunteer base, and then students would be eating it, because I just wanted to raise awareness about local food, get people involved. Like obviously there's a lot of non-economic value there, which is really what I care most about. But he was like, hey, that would be awesome, but it would have to be federally inspected, and like that's obviously super expensive, and like health and safety not going to happen. And then thanks to the director of Greenhouse, Tanya, and the director of operations at St. Paul's, who were supportive of this project from the beginning, they talked to the head chef's bosses when they had like a broader meeting with them, and basically brought this up. And again, the next level up said, no, sorry, can't happen. There's too many rules, there's too many litigation, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until I was on an advisory call set up by Dana through Meal Exchange that I was able to talk to Lorna Willis, who's a VP at Chartwells, and basically go multiple levels up from the people I was originally talking to, and brought it up kind of as an afterthought at the end of the call when most people had left, and just mentioned that I really wanted to do this and I'd really love to serve food in the calf. And so I'd reached a dead end, but I really was interested in this. And she was kind of like, oh, well, we already do that at Acadia, so I don't see why that wouldn't work. And I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So then I was basically just emailing back and forth with her to try and figure it out, and she had and then she immediately was the one who was like, and we buy it at market price, and we would do the same to you, because that's only what's fair. And I was like, you're going to pay me for it? So it really was like all about talking to the right people, and I'm really happy that Meal Exchange was able to facilitate that, and that she was so supportive. And it was more than just, oh, I guess we could make that work, but it's like, hey, let's do this. I'm going to help you with this. Like, this is important. And she sent me out initial, like a couple of like, you know, here are a couple of things you have to keep in mind. And then they actually, due to me asking them, which I didn't really realize this until reflecting on it afterwards, is that they created an entire 17-page guide for all the campuses that they'll possibly work with for their community gardens, which can now be used for all campuses across Canada, which is amazing, because I'm hoping that the next time a student approaches their head chef, who's with Chartwells, who says, I want to do something, the head chef is going to know about this document and going to be like, yes, we can make this happen, we can work together on this. So that was an amazing, broader systems output that came out of this, which was amazing. And then also just kind of cool side note, I actually met, Caitlin, Sarah and I were in Niagara yesterday for a food conference, and I met a girl named Hillary who actually started the farm at Acadia, who, like, if it wasn't for her, this might not have happened. So it's really cool how this network works and how it builds on top of other work that we're doing. So I just wanted to share that good news.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's really, really great context. And I think it's interesting too, Lexi, you're speaking to St. Paul's, and I think for other campuses it might be interesting to, when you're facing barriers, something that we've seen at other campuses is the ability to work maybe more with a department to be able to achieve some of these goals, or to have a focus. I think St. Paul's is a really good branding spot, and if it's an advantage to it, not only is it like-minded, but it's also a place to surround it with it. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. So yeah, I think there's, that might be something for other campuses to think through as useful.
I'm wondering if Lexi and anyone who's gone through the process of writing a grant to advocate for a community garden in that space on campus, if we could sort of aggregate and share those, if that's comfortable, so that again, people have access to the ways that people are making these cases, and the different ways that you talk to different funding bodies or decision makers on campus. So if you're talking to your head chef, is that a different message than to a department head or to a faculty member? But just sort of thinking if we can bring together all of the different resources about how you're making the cases for these, might be a useful tool to have on hand.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to add to that. So in terms of faculty support, the grant that I received was through the Faculty of Environment, which is my faculty. So, you know, the space was donated by St. Paul's, you know, the water is donated by St. Paul's, which is a resident, and the funding was through the faculty from the Waterloo Environment Student Endowment Fund. There you go. So there's a lot of different systems of support that you can tap into.
Totally, and an interesting just sidebar on that was at UNBC, I'm sure you guys saw that thing on the Facebook page of Sienna and like a construction worker, but she was able to bring on about, I think it totaled at about $10,000 worth of volunteer time and materials from local construction companies that were really eager to work with students and to donate some time. So if some of the sticking points are feeling like they are on campus, or if, you know, campuses can charge X number for certain materials, you know, there are options of working with outside groups to be able to sort of bring that a little bit broader. So we're coming up to 5 o'clock. That happened really quickly, and I know it's 6 and 6:30 on the East Coast. Some of the things that we kind of were thinking through, and some of the questions that might be useful for you guys, are in the looking ahead aspect. So some of the anticipated challenges and suggested strategies with those. One of the challenges that we hear a lot from campus gardens is balancing the student learning aspect and the production aspect of food, because often when coordinators are spending time on sharing activities, they're not spending time on bowling. So just wanted to flag that as an option, or as a potential challenge.
Sorry, you were kind of, sorry, Sarah, you were going in and out there, and I heard you say something about a certain kind of challenge and what we're focusing on and other things we should focus on, and I just missed that comparison.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. Sometimes, just every once in a while, it goes out, and I just missed. I think I'm missing something important.
Okay. Yeah. No. For sure. So the idea is flagging challenges, and one challenge when Caitlin and I were speaking was because you're on campus, the challenge of bridging student learning and production. Mm-hmm. Often when coordinators are spending time on helping students learn about gardens and facilitating the education, there's a lack of time spent on the actual production of food or maintenance of the garden. So trying to, in mapping out timing, just factoring in both of those factors.
Right.
Other things that we were thinking would be useful to think through are projects and plans that you have for the garden, mapping out partners that are involved in the garden, and how this fits in with your other campus food strategy group work. And then the big question of what does the garden need to stay in production longer term? So what sort of financial support, volunteer resources, community engagement, tools? And what I'm thinking, but I'd love to suss out with all of you, is if this can be sort of like a starting spark communication place to ground ourselves a little bit, and if over the next week or so you guys would be interested in thinking through some of those challenges and opportunities, and then we could maybe regroup in about a week or a week and a half to actually suss that out a little bit more. We'll share our thoughts beforehand so that when we come together we can focus the conversation a little bit more on some practical topics. And then in the meantime, we've got the resources for you if you'd like them, and hopefully maybe Lexi can send around some of the other resources that you've created.
Yeah, absolutely.
how does that sound for everyone to leave things here with those resources and those thoughts? Or are there some questions that are coming up that you'd like to discuss now?
I just wanted to make a comment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email to Sarah, which she can distribute to the network. I will include the proposal to St. Paul's, which is like a 26-page document, the proposal to our funder, which is shorter, and then the document that Chartwell's provided me in terms of their guidelines. So I just want to say and I'll put it with a little forward in the email, but all this resources could stay internal to this group, and that if anyone has any questions for me, you're more than welcome to let me know. And I mean, I want to help. I want other people to do what I'm doing, what I've been trying to do at least. So if the work that I've done can be helpful, that's wonderful. But just specifically with the Chartwell's document, they're not going to want this to. You probably couldn't read the side when I was typing, but just in general, that they're not going to want this to get out to their competitors, and I don't want to hinder this amazing relationship that I have with them. So just you can use it as a resource, as some things that food service providers, want to see, that they want to see the food wash before it's the tap. They need you to have effects and like that kind of basic stuff that is kind of hard to remember sometimes. So if you could just use it for that purposes, and Sarah, if you can make sure you include that little preface when you send it around to our networks, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely, Lexi. And we are seeing Sodexo. I know we're actually at Brock campus right now and have to go walk down and see the garden today, because I know that Sodexo has in the past focused on that. But just understanding, I think Chartwell's is really ahead of the curve on this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I actually think I just found it online. I just Googled Chartwell's Garden Guide.
Perfect. It's 17 pages. It's really pretty.
Yeah, it's really, might be more than 17 pages though. Let me see.
So they developed one for the States, and then they did one for the Canadian context, but it was based off the American one.
Yeah,
okay,
this
cool.
is 60 pages long.
Oh wow. Okay, well I will send you mine so you still have that one.
That would be great, so I don't have to read 60.
Yeah, of course.
And SJ, that's specifically focused on if you're growing for production for campus food services.
Yeah, no, I know. I just think it'll be helpful because I'm actually meeting with the VP of Supply Management at Sodexo on Wednesday, so I think knowing that these things exist and how they exist and what possibilities there are beyond the current gardens idea, and where else we can get a Sodexo supply garden kind of going and what that would look like.
Totally.
Awesome. Just a question for you guys in terms of, because I know gardens are obviously very intensive, and especially in the summer it's hard to ask you guys to glean. As I was saying, taking the learning side of gardens can take a lot of time, so we don't want this to be time consuming without a lot of value to you. So you don't have to answer now, but if there is a thought coming to you, please do share. But think about how this could be most valuable. So there isn't a separate Facebook group set up for campus community gardens. There are some already established groups of on LinkedIn especially. I've got a resource on the document of people working with urban agriculture across the world. So there's options there, but if you can think through how our engagement together would be most valuable. Things I think would be valuable if I was a student would be seeing photos or seeing those proposals throughout the season, and then having a time to get together and share ideas. But definitely want to throw the balls in your court on what would be most useful for you.
I think the LinkedIn group sounds phenomenal, so if you can give us resources for that, that'd be super cool.
Okay. Any thought there, Les or SJ, about how connecting in would be useful?
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
personally, like I know that I'm not 100% sure the programming our garden's offering right now, but I know they do some educational stuff. The volunteer coordinators that are running, I've yet to meet with them myself. So it'd just be really interesting to see how like other campuses have gotten people engaged. Like I know before coming here to MUN, I was at the agricultural college, and their garden was more than just a garden. It was really aesthetically pleasing to the campus. They took the time to, instead of just having everyone's plots there, everyone had to design a little bit of a wooden sign and make it somewhere so that you wanted to go and spend time rather than just a place where things were growing. They did a great deal to landscape the area around it, and it really helped raise the awareness for students around there because it was just something that was so beautiful you couldn't miss it. You had to go check this out. People were always talking about it, not just students, but community members were coming in. So I'd like to see how other campuses have done that other than the agricultural college. I know right now, after visiting the one here at MUN, it is kind of plain right now. Even well, I mean, we haven't got anything started to grow there yet. But just improving the image of it and making it somewhere that students really talk about. Yeah, and just to comment something I thought of there. Sarah Jane, I know that when you guys talk about placement and stuff of the gardens, the agricultural college, what they try to do is they have more than one. There's a variety of them around. The way that they were able to pitch it in some places to the faculty, which is a lot easier, of course, at an agricultural college, but they were trying to use the land that wasn't being used productively for anything else. They were trying to find green spaces or areas where there was nothing. Let's beautify the campus. Let's make it purposeful. So little spots like next to some of the parking lots, there was little tiny green spaces, like just strips of grass. And they really tried to install places there to make this green space not only functional, aesthetically pleasing, but make people appreciate it more. So it's really trying to make use of the unused space was the best timing and conditions for them to put something in.
And that's a great point, Les. Something that we've seen from campuses are increasing the value of the land, as well as it reduces facilities time. Like if you're using a large amount of land that they would be using for mowing the grass or seeding or weeding, you know, that's hours over the summer. So if it's other stakeholders taking responsibility for it, it's a really great opportunity. As well as I'm thinking for RC, like if they're the Renaissance College where Sarah Jane's talking about, like if down the road they're planning to sell that land, often if there's a garden on there, it actually raises the value of land.
Yeah, that's why I was pitching this whole like social student space with some raised beds, and they already have picnic tables, but maybe that'll be for future expansion.
I just wanted to add to that, as a concern for like landowners, if you will, so we're talking to the Director of Operations at St. Paul's, and I imagine with other university campuses it's similar, their plant operations, what have you, a huge major concern with maintenance and keeping it looking pretty. That needs to be visually appealing. So not only does this help in terms of attracting students, but this helps allow you to get space, like allow it to happen, and for you to receive institutional support, which I think is incredibly vital. So I completely agree with you, Les.
Just to chime in, I know the story at Dal is that it wasn't until they engaged a designer and architecture class in creating plans for the garden, and it was just this really beautiful digital representation of what the space could be, and they really felt like that was an important part of really getting the buy-in from administration. So sometimes it's about the presentation and helping people visualize and showing that there's sort of hard resources behind it and thought going into it, because often a primary concern of admin is that it's going to be like an eyesore and but being able from the beginning to show like there's a plan for this, there's resources behind it, maybe presenting it that way might be a strategy.
Les, do you think you could share out if you have any photos or resources of the agricultural college's gardens?
Yeah, I think I've got some on one of my old SD cards. I'll have to go through my old hard drive to find them, because I did take some pictures while I was up there. I'm trying to connect somebody at Dal with someone at the AC, because a lot of these projects, they've been doing them for 10, 15 years throughout the campus, and they're all done through, mostly are done through classes or community partnerships. Like the people actually have to pay a decent amount to get a plot at that garden. There are gardens just for students, and there are gardens that community members pay into to get, and it's very, very competitive within the community to get it. You have to get in there early or you don't find it. I'm trying to look up stuff now, but when the Agricultural College just went over a bit of a change, it did just get taken over by Dow. Some of the resources have been taken offline, so it's trying to find their old student union stuff. If I find it, I will share it along. I've definitely got pictures on one of my hard drives somewhere about here.
Thank you guys so much for starting this conversation. Thank you for really just to know that there's so many different ways of going about this work is so important. And to hear that there are successes and there are challenges to this kind of all around us. So we'll definitely send out the resources that we've put so far, but really and I'll add Lexi's on and just encourage you all to send along questions to the group as much as you would like and as much as would be useful, and you can get some resources there. As Celia mentioned when she was on the call, she's gained so much traction by just pointing to other campuses, so we really hope that this can be a place to do that as well. And if there's anything that Caitlin and I can do to help advocate for that or bring in certain people to maybe help navigate that system, that would be something we'd be more than happy. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, guys. And I know Dana will be in touch with Lexi, and then I'll be in touch with SJ and Les to talk about more details on how to plan this out on specific campuses. But thank you guys all for taking an hour plus to chat today. And I hope this was a bit inspiring and useful. And if you have any feedback on future calls or thoughts on how we can utilize this, definitely shoot us an email or drop a line in the collective group.
Awesome, thanks so much, Sarah. I and Caitlin, and Les and Lexi, I did find this a nice way to end off a frustrating meeting to the day, and I've got lots of ideas and feel like there's good places to go. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for all your contributions.
All right, see you later.
Thanks so much. Bye.